Just when Emily believes she has uncovered Eleanor's final secret, workers restoring. The old orchard discover a sealed, underground cellar hidden beneath the oldest apple tree. Inside is a locked wooden trunk with a note that reads, "This was never meant for my family. It was always meant for yours." But when Emily finally opens it, she finds a photograph, that should be impossible one, showing her late mother standing beside Eleanor decades before they were ever supposed to have met. Before we begin today's incredible story, make sure to join our YouTube family by hitting the subscribe button. If you enjoy emotional stories filled with mystery, hidden treasures, unexpected twists, and inspiring endings, don't forget to like this video. And before we dive in, tell us in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your country. We love hearing from viewers all around the world. Now get comfortable, because today's story follows a homeless, 19-year-old girl who risked her very last, $10 on an abandoned storage unit. She expected nothing but junk. But what she discovered inside would uncover a secret someone had spent decades trying to protect and change her life forever. Now let's get into the story. Emily Harper stared at the crumpled $10 bill in her hand as though it might somehow multiply if she looked at it long enough. It didn't. That single bill represented everything she had left. No savings, no family to call, no place to sleep, no guarantee she would even eat tomorrow. At 19 years old, life had become something she never imagined possible. Only 4 months earlier, she had been finishing high school while working evenings at a neighborhood diner. She wasn't rich. She wasn't popular. But she had a plan. Graduate, save money, attend community college, build a better future. Then everything collapsed. Her mother passed away unexpectedly after a sudden illness. Medical bills consumed every dollar they owned. The small apartment they rented was eventually lost. The landlord changed the locks only 3 weeks after the funeral. Emily carried 2 duffel bags onto the sidewalk and watched strangers move into what had once been home. She never cried. Not because she wasn't hurting, because she simply didn't have time. Survival became more important than grief. She slept wherever she could. Sometimes inside her aging hatchback, sometimes beneath a church shelter, sometimes not at all. Every morning she woke before sunrise. She washed her face inside public restrooms, brushed her hair, put on the same clean jeans and gray hoodie, then spent the entire day searching for work. Most employers smiled politely before asking the same question. Current address? Emily hesitated every time. She couldn't exactly write. Blue hatchback behind the grocery store? Applications quietly disappeared into trash bins. Days turned into weeks. The money disappeared even faster. Now, only $10 remained. That morning she parked beside an old industrial district, hoping another business might be hiring. Instead, she noticed several vehicles gathered outside. A weathered storage facility. A hand-painted sign hung beside the entrance. Abandoned storage unit auction. Starting bid, $10. Emily almost laughed. I can barely afford lunch. Yet something kept her standing there. Curiosity, maybe desperation. She quietly joined the small crowd. The auction had already begun. Several larger units sold quickly. Old furniture, motorcycles, antiques. One buyer celebrated after discovering expensive tools. Another found collectible artwork. People smiled, laughed, talked excitedly about profits. Emily simply watched. Eventually, only one storage unit remained. It sat alone near the back corner of the property, smaller than all the others. The steel door squealed loudly as the manager rolled it upward. Inside, nothing looked valuable. A cracked wooden dresser, dust-covered boxes, broken lamps, old chairs, a large wooden storage chest. Everything appeared forgotten. The auctioneer sighed. Final unit. Starting bid, $10. Silence. Nobody moved. One man laughed. You'd spend more hauling away the junk. Another shook his head. Not worth it. The auctioneer looked around one final time. Any bids? Emily felt her heartbeat quicken. This was ridiculous. She needed food. Gasoline, not someone else's abandoned junk. Still, she couldn't explain why she slowly raised her hand. I'll bid. Several people turned toward her. Some smiled sympathetically. Others looked confused. The auctioneer nodded. $10. Any higher? Nobody answered. The hammer struck once. Sold. Just like that. Emily's last $10 disappeared. The manager handed her a small brass key. Congratulations. Emily smiled nervously. She wasn't sure congratulations were appropriate. She had just spent every penny she owned on a room full of garbage. After everyone left, she rolled the storage door completely open. Dust floated through bright afternoon sunlight. The smell of old wood filled the air. She carefully examined each item. Most appeared worthless. The dresser drawers were empty. Several chairs were broken beyond repair. Boxes contained worn blankets, faded books, and cracked dishes. Nothing worth selling. Her stomach tightened. What have I done? She sat quietly on the old wooden chest. For a long moment, she simply stared around the storage unit. Maybe everyone else had been right. Maybe desperation had made her foolish. Still, something about the place felt strangely peaceful, like someone had once cared deeply about these belongings. Emily decided to organize everything before throwing anything away. Her mother had always taught her one important lesson: never judge something before you truly understand it. So she began cleaning. She stacked books neatly, folded blankets, separated damaged furniture. Hours passed. The storage unit slowly transformed from chaotic junk into an organized collection of forgotten memories. Finally, only the large wooden chest remained. It looked handmade. Heavy oak, iron hinges, beautiful craftsmanship despite decades of neglect. Emily lifted the lid. Inside, nothing. Completely empty. Disappointed, she prepared to close it. Then sunlight caught something unusual. A tiny strip of yellowed paper taped beneath the inside of the lid, hidden where almost nobody would ever think to look. She carefully peeled it free. It wasn't just paper. It was an envelope. Old, sealed. Across the front, someone had written 6 careful words. If you found this, don't sell anything. Emily frowned. Whoever left the message had expected someone else to eventually own the storage unit. Why? She slowly opened the envelope. Inside rested a handwritten letter. My name is Eleanor Brooks. If you're reading this, then everything I owned has finally been abandoned. I don't know who you are, but if you're patient, you've just inherited something far greater than old furniture. Emily's breathing slowed. She looked around the storage unit again. Suddenly, every worthless object seemed different. The letter continued, the real treasure isn't inside the boxes. It's hidden where nobody ever thinks to search. Before Emily could read another word, a black luxury SUV quietly pulled into the storage facility. 3 well-dressed strangers stepped out. One of them pointed directly toward Emily's storage unit. Then he calmly said something that made her blood run cold. She's here. Get the chest before she opens the rest of the letter. Emily instinctively folded the letter and slipped it into the pocket of her hoodie. Her heart pounded so hard she could hear it. Outside the storage unit, the 3 strangers walked toward her with calm, confident steps. They weren't rushing. That frightened her even more. People only moved that calmly when they believed they were already in control. The tallest man smiled politely. Good afternoon. Emily forced herself to smile back. Can I help you? His eyes immediately drifted toward the old wooden chest. We'd like to buy that storage unit. Emily hesitated. It's not for sale. The second man stepped forward. We'll give you $500. $500. Only an hour earlier, she had owned 10. Now someone was offering 50 times that amount for a room full of junk. Emily knew one thing immediately. The storage unit wasn't worthless, and whatever secret Eleanor Brooks had hidden, these people already knew about it. Emily shook her head. I'm keeping it. The tall man smiled again. This time, the kindness disappeared from his eyes. Think carefully. It's just old furniture. Emily quietly closed the wooden chest. If it's only old furniture, why are you offering $500? For the first time, none of them answered. Instead, the third man looked around to make sure nobody else remained nearby. Then he reached into his pocket. Emily's stomach tightened. Fortunately, he didn't pull out a weapon, only a business card. If you change your mind, our offer becomes $1,000. He placed the card on top of the chest. Then all 3 quietly walked back toward the black SUV. They drove away without another word. Emily didn't move until the vehicle completely disappeared beyond the front gate. Only then did she release the breath she'd been holding. She looked at the business card. There was no company name, No address, only a phone number. Nothing about the situation felt normal. She immediately returned to the letter. My name is Eleanor Brooks. I spent 40 years collecting documents, journals, maps, and family records. They're worth far more than money. Several people have tried to buy them. They don't want the collection. They want what it proves. Emily frowned. What could old papers possibly prove? She continued reading. The first clue is hidden inside the blue book. She looked around. There were dozens of books stacked against one wall. Most were covered with dust. She searched through them one by one. Brown, green, black. Finally, a faded blue leather journal appeared near the bottom. She carefully opened it. Every page had been hollowed out by hand. Inside rested an old brass key. Attached to it was another handwritten note. Don't trust anyone offering money. Emily stared at the tiny key. Her pulse quickened again. This was becoming much bigger than she ever imagined. She searched through more boxes. Hidden beneath folded blankets, she discovered dozens of carefully organized journals. Each contained handwritten family histories dating back more than 100 years. Old property maps, birth certificates, letters, photographs. Everything had been preserved with incredible care. She realized Eleanor hadn't been collecting antiques. She had been protecting history. Several pages repeatedly mentioned one location, Brooks Orchard. Emily unfolded one of the old maps. The orchard had once covered hundreds of acres outside town. But according to modern maps, nothing existed there anymore. Only empty fields. Another envelope slipped from between the pages. If you found the key, you're ready for the second step. The lock isn't inside this storage unit. It's waiting where the old apple tree still stands. Emily whispered to herself. The orchard. Just then her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered cautiously. Hello? A calm older woman's voice spoke quietly. Don't go back to your car. Emily froze. Who is this? My name doesn't matter. They've already slashed your tires. Emily slowly looked toward the parking lot. Her hatchback sat exactly where she'd left it. From this distance, everything looked normal. The woman continued. The people who offered money, they're not finished. They've spent 20 years searching for what Eleanor hid. Emily's voice trembled. How do you know all this? Because I was Eleanor's lawyer, and she's been expecting you. The call ended. Emily ran toward her car. The woman had been telling the truth. All 4 tires had been cut. A note rested beneath the windshield wiper. Only 4 words were written across the paper. You should have sold it. Emily slowly turned around. The storage facility suddenly felt completely different. The wooden chest, the journals, the brass key, the hidden orchard. Someone wasn't simply interested in buying them anymore. Someone was now trying to make absolutely certain. She never reached whatever the key was meant to open. Emily stood beside her disabled car, staring at the note fluttering beneath the windshield wiper. You should have sold it. The words were simple, but they carried a warning far louder than any threat. For a moment, panic threatened to overwhelm her. She was 19 years old, homeless, alone, and now someone was following her over a storage unit she had bought with her last $10. Then she remembered something her mother used to say whenever life seemed impossible. When fear tells you to quit, that's usually when you're closest to something worth finding. Emily took a deep breath. She wasn't going to run anymore. The elderly lawyer had mentioned Eleanor Brooks had been expecting her. If Eleanor had gone through so much trouble to protect these journals and the brass key, there had to be a reason. Within an hour, the lawyer arrived at the storage facility in an old pickup truck. Her name was Clara Whitmore. She looked to be in her 70s, with silver hair tied neatly behind her head and kind eyes that somehow made Emily feel safe. Clara examined the slashed tires before quietly nodding. I was afraid they'd do this. You knew they were watching? Clara sighed. For years, they believed Eleanor hid something worth millions. Emily looked confused. Did she? Clara smiled softly. No. She hid something far more valuable. Together, they loaded the wooden chest, the journals, and the remaining boxes into Clara's truck. Before leaving, Clara carefully locked the storage unit again. They'll come back. But by then, it won't matter. They drove nearly 2 hours into the countryside until they reached an overgrown piece of land. Wild grass covered most of it. Only one enormous apple tree remained standing. Its trunk was ancient. Its branches stretched toward the bright blue sky. Emily unfolded the old map. The faded markings matched perfectly. "This is Brooks Orchard." Clara nodded. "It once belonged to Eleanor's family." Emily walked toward the tree. At its base stood an old iron post almost hidden beneath vines. A small lock had been built into the stone beside it. Her hands trembled as she removed the brass key from her pocket. The key fit perfectly. She turned it slowly. A quiet click echoed beneath the ground. Several feet away, a flat stone shifted upward. Emily knelt beside it. Hidden underneath was a waterproof metal container. Inside were dozens of original land deeds, family records, and legal documents. At the very bottom rested one final envelope. It was addressed simply, "To the person who refused to give up." Emily opened it. Inside was Eleanor's final letter. "My family lost this orchard through fraud nearly 50 years ago. Powerful investors forged documents and stole everything. I spent the rest of my life collecting proof. I knew I might never live long enough to restore what was taken. So I left everything to the first person who earned it." Emily blinked. "Earned it?" Clara smiled. Eleanor watched every storage auction. She knew greedy buyers only looked for quick money. "You were the first person who treated every object with respect." She believed character reveals itself when nobody is watching. Emily looked down at the legal documents again. The evidence proved the land had been stolen illegally decades earlier. Within weeks, Clara helped present everything to the courts. The investigation reopened. Historians verified the documents. Surveyors confirmed the original property lines. Months later, the ruling became official. The Brooks family estate was restored. Since Eleanor had no surviving heirs, everything legally passed to Emily, not because she was related, because Eleanor had written a perfectly valid trust years earlier. She had chosen Emily as her successor. The abandoned orchard became hers, but Emily didn't sell it. Instead, she restored it. She replanted hundreds of apple trees, built a small farmer's market, opened a community cafe inside the old barn. Local families found work there. Students earned scholarships funded by orchard profits. The place that had once been forgotten became one of the town's greatest treasures. News reporters often asked Emily how someone who had once been homeless managed to rebuild an entire community. She always smiled before answering. "I thought I spent my last $10 on junk. It turns out I invested in kindness." Years later, visitors entering. The orchard always noticed a small framed photograph hanging inside the cafe. It showed Eleanor Brooks smiling beneath the same old apple tree. Below the photograph were her final words: "The greatest inheritance is never money. It's giving the right person a second chance." Emily had walked into that storage auction believing she had nothing left. She walked away with something no amount of money could ever truly buy: a home, a purpose, a future, and the chance to become the kind of person her mother always believed she could be.